The thunder of hooves on packed dirt echoed through the small frontier town of Willow Creek, Montana, as Willa Gregory pressed her trembling hands against the faded silk of her wedding dress. Through the chapel's open window, she caught a glimpse of a lone rider galloping down the main street, dust billowing behind him like a storm cloud. Something about the silhouette stirred a memory deep within her, but she pushed it aside. Today was her wedding day, the day she would finally secure a future for herself and her younger brother. The year was 1878, and at 22, Willa had nearly resigned herself to spinsterhood after her parents' deaths 3 years prior. Thomas Everett, the town banker, had offered her security, respectability, and most importantly, enough money to send her 15-year-old brother to school back east. The fact that Thomas was nearly 45 with cold eyes and hands that lingered too long was something she had convinced herself she could endure. "Dearly beloved," Reverend Johnson began, his voice carrying through the modest church filled with Willow Creek's finest citizens. "We are gathered here today in the sight of God to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony." Willa stared straight ahead, avoiding the triumphant gleam in Thomas's eyes as he stood beside her at the altar. The Reverend's words washed over her like a distant river, meaningless sounds that were carrying her toward an inescapable fate. "Marriage is not to be entered into lightly," the minister continued, opening the worn leather book of vows. "It is a sacred union, blessed by." The church doors crashed open with such force that several women gasped. Sunlight streamed in, silhouetting a tall figure standing in the doorway. Dust motes danced in the shaft of light as the stranger stepped forward, spurs jingling with each deliberate step. "I object," came a deep voice that sent a shiver down Willa's spine, a voice she had not heard in 5 long years. The minister faltered, the book of vows still open in his hands. "Sir, that part hasn't—" "I don't care what part we're at," the man said, removing his hat to reveal sun-bronzed features and eyes as blue as a summer sky. "This wedding can't happen." Willa's heart nearly stopped. Hunter Blackett stood in the center aisle, still dressed in trail-worn clothes, his dark hair longer than she remembered. 5 years had transformed the boy she'd loved into a man broader, harder, with a thin scar running along his jawline that hadn't been there when he'd ridden out of Willow Creek. Thomas stepped forward, his face flushing with anger. "This is preposterous. Who are you to interrupt my wedding?" Hunter never took his eyes off Willa. "Your wedding? Last I checked, it takes 2 willing people to make a marriage." He took another step forward. "Are you willing, Willa? Or are you just doing what you've always done, sacrificing yourself for everyone else?" The church erupted in scandalized whispers. Willa felt dozens of eyes upon her, waiting for her response. Her gaze locked with Hunter's, and 5 years of hurt, longing, and unanswered questions crashed over her. "You left," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the murmurs filling the church. "You promised you'd come back in a year. It's been 5. Pain flashed across Hunter's face. "I have explanations for those 5 years, if you'll hear them." He glanced around the church at the curious faces watching them. "Though perhaps not here." Thomas stepped between them, his usually composed demeanor cracking. "Miss Gregory is about to become Mrs. Everett. Whatever history you share is precisely that history." Hunter's hand moved instinctively toward his holster, but he stopped himself. "Let Willa speak for herself." All eyes turned to her. Willa stood frozen, caught between the life she'd resigned herself to and the man she'd never stopped loving. Her brother Matthew sat in the front pew, his eyes wide with recognition. He'd been just 10 when Hunter left, but he remembered the young man who had taught him to fish and ride. "Willa," Thomas said sharply, "tell this cowboy to leave so we can continue our ceremony." Her hands twisted the small bouquet of wildflowers she held until stems snapped. "I can't," she whispered, then louder. "I can't marry you, Thomas. The banker's face contorted with rage. You made a commitment. What about our arrangement? An arrangement isn't a marriage, Hunter said, stepping closer to Willa. And Willa deserves better than being bought and sold. Thomas lunged forward, grabbing Willa's arm with bruising force. You ungrateful, his words cut off as Hunter's fist connected with his jaw, sending the banker stumbling backward into the altar. The Reverend jumped aside, clutching his book of vows to his chest. Don't you touch her, Hunter growled. Two of Thomas's friends rushed forward, but Matthew leapt from his seat, positioning himself between the men and his sister. Leave my sister alone. Willa gathered her skirts and moved to Hunter's side. I'm sorry, Thomas. I should never have agreed to this in the first place. Thomas wiped blood from his lip, his voice venomous. You'll regret this. Both of you. Hunter placed his hat back on his head and offered Willa his arm. Shall we? Without hesitation, she took it. Together, they walked down the aisle, past the shocked faces of Willow Creek's residents. The sunlight outside was blinding after the dimness of the church, and Willa blinked, half expecting to wake from a dream. My horse is tied up at the general store, Hunter said softly. Matthew came running after them. Willa, what's happening? Where are you going? Willa looked at her brother, then at Hunter. I don't know yet. Hunter turned to the boy, who now stood nearly as tall as him. Matthew, right? You've grown. Matthew nodded, bewildered. You're Hunter Blackett. You used to work at the Jenkins Ranch. That's right. Hunter studied the young man. How would you feel about a ride out to my place? It's not far, just about 3 miles outside of town. Willa and I have some catching up to do, and I think you should be part of that conversation. Willa stared at him. Your place. Hunter's expression softened. I bought the old Miller property last month. That's why I'm back. His eyes held hers. I always planned to come back, Willa. I just didn't think it would take this long. Within minutes, they were riding out of town, Willa perched in front of Hunter on his stallion, Matthew following on a horse borrowed from the livery. Willa could feel the solid warmth of Hunter's chest against her back, his arms around her as he held the reins. It felt both familiar and new, like returning to a beloved book only to discover chapters she'd never read before. The Miller property came into view as they crested a small rise, a modest but sturdy cabin with a barn and corral, nestled against a backdrop of pine trees. Smoke curled from the chimney, and a small garden was taking shape along one side. You've been busy, Willa observed as Hunter helped her down from the horse. Had to make it worthy of bringing you here, he replied quietly. Though I didn't plan on it happening quite like this. Inside, the cabin was simple but comfortable. A pot of coffee sat warming on the stove, and the main room held a table, chairs, and a bookshelf already half filled. Hunter gestured for them to sit while he poured coffee for the adults and found some cider for Matthew. When they were settled, he took a deep breath. I owe you both an explanation. Willa clutched her mug. 5 years, Hunter. You said 1. He nodded, his eyes pained. I meant it to be 1. I rode down to Texas with plans to work the cattle drives, make enough money to buy us land, and come straight back. He ran a hand through his hair. The first year went according to plan. I had saved nearly enough when our trail boss was killed in a river crossing. I had to step up, finish the drive. Matthew leaned forward, fascinated. You became trail boss? Hunter nodded. By the end of that drive, I'd made a name for myself. Was offered double pay to lead another drive the next season. He looked at Willa. I wrote you letters explaining everything. Did you never get them? Willa shook her head slowly. Not one. Hunter's expression darkened. I sent them through Thomas Everett since he ran the post office connections. He always assured me they'd been delivered. That snake, Matthew muttered. After the second year, I was going to come back regardless, but I was shot during a rustler attack. Hunter unconsciously touched his side. Spent 3 months recovering on a ranch in Colorado. By then, I'd heard rumors that you were being courted by Thomas. Willa's eyes filled with tears. He started coming around after my parents died. At first, he was just helping with their debts. Then he offered to pay for Matthew's schooling if I'd. She trailed off. If you'd marry him, Hunter finished, his jaw tight. Matthew slammed his cup down. I never wanted you to marry him for my sake, Willa. I told you that. Willa reached for her brother's hand. What choice did we have? The farm was gone, our parents' debts were crushing us, and I had no skills beyond keeping house. You could have come to find me, Hunter said softly. How? I had no idea where you were. Willa's voice rose. You vanished, Hunter. 5 years without a word. I sent 12 letters the first year alone, Hunter insisted. After that, I hired people passing through to deliver messages directly. Did none of them reach you? Willa shook her head, realization dawning. Thomas controlled all the mail, and he made sure anyone new in town met him first. Her hands trembled. He's been manipulating everything. Hunter reached across the table and took her hands in his. Willa, I never stopped loving you. Every mile of trail, every dollar earned, every day spent healing, it was all to get back to you. Then why wait until my wedding day to appear? You said you've been back a month. Hunter's expression grew troubled. I heard you were engaged, but I didn't know the wedding was so soon. I've been trying to establish myself here first, make sure I had something solid to offer you. Then yesterday, I rode into Silver Creek to buy lumber and overheard someone talking about Everett's wedding to the Gregory girl tomorrow. His grip on her hands tightened. I rode through the night to get back in time. Matthew looked between them. What happens now? Thomas won't take this lightly. Hunter's expression hardened. No, he won't. But he can't force Willa to marry him, and he's going to have to answer for intercepting my letters. That's a federal offense. Willa stood suddenly, pacing the small cabin. I have nothing, Hunter. No home, no money. I can't impose on you after all this time. Hunter rose and gently caught her shoulders. Willa Gregory, I bought this land for us. I've spent 5 years working toward the moment I could ask you to build a life with me. His blue eyes searched hers. Unless your feelings have changed? No, she whispered. They never did. He smiled then, the same smile that had captured her heart when they were teenagers stealing moments behind her father's barn. Then you're not imposing. You're coming home. The next morning, Willa woke in the small bedroom Hunter had insisted she take while he slept in the barn. Matthew had taken a pallet by the fireplace. For a moment, she lay still, tracing the patterns of sunlight on the rough-hewn ceiling. Yesterday's events seemed dreamlike, the almost wedding, Hunter's dramatic return, the revelations about Thomas's deception. A gentle knock at the door roused her. Willa? Are you awake? Hunter called softly. Yes, come in. He entered, already dressed for the day in a clean shirt and denims, his hair still damp from washing. I need to ride into town to handle some business. Would you like to come along? Or would you prefer to stay here? Willa sat up, suddenly aware of her rumpled wedding dress, the only clothing she had. I should come. I need to collect our things from the boarding house. She hesitated. But I have nothing to wear. Hunter smiled. I thought of that. He laid a bundle on the bed. Mrs. Miller left some clothes behind when they moved to Oregon. She was about your size. An hour later, dressed in a simple blue calico dress that fit reasonably well, Willa rode beside Hunter into Willow Creek. Matthew had elected to stay behind, eager to explore the property and tend to the horses. The town seemed to hold its breath as they rode down the main street. Curtains twitched in windows and people stopped to stare. Outside the general store, Hunter helped Willa down from her horse, his hands lingering at her waist. "I need to speak with Sheriff Davis about Thomas's interference with the mail," Hunter said. "Will you be all right gathering your things?" Willa nodded. "Our boarding house is just down the street. I won't be long." Hunter caught her hand as she turned to go. "Willa." His voice was low, intense. "I meant what I said yesterday. I never stopped loving you." Her heart fluttered. "Nor I you." They parted, each with their tasks. Willa had just reached the boarding house when a voice called her name. She turned to see Clara Jenkins, her closest friend, hurrying toward her. "Willa, everyone's talking about what happened yesterday," Clara exclaimed, catching up to her. "Is it true? Hunter Blackett returned and swept you away from the altar." Willa couldn't help but smile. "Not exactly from the altar, but yes, Hunter is back." Clara's eyes widened. "And Thomas?" "He's furious, Willa. He was at the saloon until late last night, drinking and threatening all sorts of things." A chill ran through Willa. "What sort of things?" "He said Hunter wouldn't leave town alive," Clara whispered. "No one took him seriously. He was drunk, after all, but still." Willa's blood ran cold. "I need to warn Hunter. He's at the sheriff's office." She turned to hurry back toward the main street when the crack of a gunshot split the air. Screams erupted from the direction of the sheriff's office, and Willa's heart nearly stopped. "Hunter!" she gasped, gathering her skirts and running toward the sound. She rounded the corner to see a crowd gathering. Pushing her way through, she found Hunter standing in the street, his stance wide and alert, hand hovering near his holster. Across from him, Thomas Everett swayed slightly, a smoking pistol in his hand. "You've ruined everything," Thomas slurred. 5 years I spent working my way into her life, and you destroy it in 5 minutes. Sheriff Davis stood to one side, his own weapon drawn. "Put the gun down, Thomas. You've already fired 1 shot in a public street. That's enough to put you in jail." Willa pushed forward until she stood at the edge of the confrontation. "Thomas, please. This won't solve anything." Thomas's bloodshot eyes fixed on her. "You humiliated me in front of the entire town, after everything I've done for you and that worthless brother of yours." Hunter's voice was dangerously calm. "The only worthless man I see is the one who tried to buy himself a wife by manipulating a vulnerable woman." Thomas raised his gun again, aiming at Hunter's chest. "I should have had you killed years ago when I first intercepted your letters." Gasps rippled through the crowd at this public confession. Sheriff Davis stepped forward. "That's enough, Thomas. You just admitted to a federal crime. Now lower your weapon." Instead, Thomas swung the gun toward Willa. "If I can't have her," Hunter moved with the speed of a striking rattlesnake. He lunged forward, knocking Thomas's arm upward as the banker squeezed the trigger. The shot went wild, and in the next moment, Hunter had Thomas pinned to the ground, the banker's face pressed into the dirt. Sheriff Davis quickly moved in, taking Thomas's gun and pulling out handcuffs. "Thomas Everett, you're under arrest for attempted murder, mail tampering, and public endangerment." As the sheriff led a cursing Thomas away, Willa rushed to Hunter's side. "Are you hurt?" He shook his head, pulling her close. "I'm fine." His arms tightened around her. "Though I think we've given the town enough to gossip about for one day." Over the next week, the full extent of Thomas's deception came to light. Not only had he intercepted Hunter's letters, but he had spread rumors about Hunter abandoning Willa, and had even written to the school back east that Matthew had been interested in, withdrawing his application without Willa's knowledge. Hunter and Willa spent those days settling into a new rhythm. She moved her and Matthew's belongings to the cabin, turning it slowly into a home. Hunter worked from dawn until dusk, expanding the corral, fixing the roof, and planting more vegetables in the garden. Matthew, freed from the burden of Thomas's influence, thrived in the open spaces, learning ranching skills from Hunter and discovering a natural talent with horses. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch, watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Hunter would tell stories of his years on the trail, and Willa would share the small-town happenings he had missed. Slowly, the 5-year gap between them began to close. 10 days after the disrupted wedding, Hunter found Willa by the creek that ran along the edge of the property. She sat on a fallen log, trailing her fingers through the clear water, lost in thought. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, settling beside her. She smiled. "I was just thinking about how different my life is from what I expected 2 weeks ago." "Disappointed?" he asked, only half joking. "Relieved," she corrected, turning to face him. "I would have honored my commitment to Thomas, but it would have killed something inside me." Hunter took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I can't stop thinking about how close I came to losing you forever." "You didn't, though. You came back just in time." He shifted to face her directly. "Willa, I didn't just come back to stop your wedding. I came back to ask you to be part of a different one." From his pocket, he withdrew a small ring, a simple silver band with a single pearl. "It was my mother's. I've carried it with me for 5 years, waiting for the right moment to give it to you." Willa's breath caught. "Hunter, I know it's fast. After everything that's happened, we can wait as long as you need. But I want you to know that my intentions haven't changed since the day I rode out of Willow Creek." He held the ring between them. "I love you, Willa Gregory. I loved you when we were 18. I loved you every day I was gone, and I'll love you for the rest of my days. Will you marry me?" Tears spilled down Willa's cheeks as she nodded. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you." Hunter slipped the ring onto her finger, then drew her into a kiss that spoke of years of longing finally fulfilled. When they parted, both were breathless. "When?" he asked simply. Willa smiled. "Soon, but not too soon. I'd like to actually plan this wedding, rather than be forced into it." Hunter laughed. "Fair enough. Though I hope I won't have to storm any churches to stop it this time." They walked back to the cabin hand in hand, where Matthew was attempting to cook dinner. The boy's face lit up when he saw the ring on his sister's finger. "Finally," he exclaimed. "Does this mean I can officially have the bedroom by the kitchen?" Hunter ruffled the boy's hair. "Already making plans, are you?" Matthew grinned. "Just being practical. Besides, you two will want the bigger room once you're married." As summer turned to fall, the cabin transformed. Hunter added a second bedroom, enlarged the kitchen, and built a proper front porch where they could watch the sunset. Willa turned the rocky soil into a thriving garden and filled the house with small touches that made it truly a home. Curtains at the windows, quilts on the beds, and wildflowers in jars on the table. Word spread through the county about Hunter Blackett's ranch. His reputation as a skilled horseman brought people looking for well-trained mounts, and soon he had more business than he could handle alone. He hired 2 hands to help with the expanding herd, and by the first snowfall, the Blackett Ranch was becoming known as one of the most promising in the territory. Thomas Everett was sentenced to 5 years in prison for his crimes. His banking business sold to cover his debts. Few in town mourned his departure, especially once the extent of his manipulations became known. On a crisp October day, with aspen leaves glowing gold against the blue Montana sky, Willa Gregory stood once more in a wedding dress, though this one was of her own choosing, a cream-colored gown with lace at the collar and cuffs. Matthew, now 16 and growing more confident by the day, escorted her to the front of Willow Creek's church. Reverend Johnson stood before the congregation, a different book of vows in his hands, the old one having been retired after the disruption of Willa's first almost wedding had torn several pages. "Dearly beloved," he began, his eyes twinkling. We are gathered here today, and I hope without interruption this time, to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony." Soft laughter rippled through the church. Hunter, handsome in a new black suit, winked at Willa as she took her place beside him. This time, when the minister opened the book of vows, no cowboy stormed in to stop the words. Instead, Hunter and Willa spoke their promises to one another with clear voices and full hearts, sealing their vows with a kiss that drew cheers from everyone present. The celebration afterward lasted well into the evening, with tables set up outside the church under strings of lanterns. There was dancing and feasting, storytelling and laughter. Matthew regaled younger children with the tale of how Hunter had dramatically halted Willa's wedding to the villain banker, each retelling growing more elaborate than the last. As night fell, Hunter led Willa away from the festivities toward where their horses waited. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Blackett?" The name sent a thrill through her. "More than ready, Mr. Blackett." They rode home under a canopy of stars, to the cabin that had become their sanctuary. Inside, Hunter had prepared one final surprise. The main room was filled with candles, and on the table sat a small cake and a bottle of champagne that he'd secretly arranged to have delivered. "Welcome home," he whispered, lifting her into his arms to carry her across the threshold. Later, as they lay together in the quiet darkness of their bedroom, Willa traced the scar along Hunter's jawline. "I never asked how you got this." He caught her hand, kissing her fingertips. "Barbed wire fence in the dark. Not very heroic, I'm afraid." She laughed softly. "I don't need you to be heroic. I just need you to be here. Always," he promised, drawing her closer. "For the next 50 years, at least." 50 years? She raised an eyebrow. "You think we'll last that long?" Hunter smiled, his blue eyes reflecting the moonlight streaming through the window. "Longer. Took me 5 years to get back to you, Willa. Now that I have you, I'm never letting go." As winter settled over Montana, the Blackett ranch thrived. Matthew excelled with the horses, developing a special touch that even Hunter admired. Willa discovered she had a head for business, keeping the ranch's books with precision and negotiating sales with a shrewdness that surprised everyone except Hunter. "I always knew you were the smartest person in Willow Creek," he told her one night as they reviewed the month's profits. When spring arrived, bringing with it green grass and newborn foals, Willa shared news of her own. By Christmas, their family would grow by one more. Hunter's joy was boundless. He spent weeks crafting a cradle from pine wood, carving intricate designs of horses and wildflowers along its edges. And so their life together unfolded, season by season, year by year, not without challenges, but always with the certainty that they had found in each other exactly what they were meant to have. The minister's interrupted words had given way to a love story written in their own terms, one that would continue long after the Wild West had been tamed. For Willa and Hunter Blackett, forever had begun the moment he stormed into that church and stopped the wrong wedding from taking place, setting them both on the path to the right one.